Hello and welcome to the CODESYS Feature Briefing, October 2023. My name is Silmar Panzer. Thanks for joining us and for investing your time. Within this event, we would like to inform you on important activities in the CODESYS group. Especially, we want to show new features and improvement that we have recently completed or will roll out soon. And then we want to inform you about new developments that we plan to do in the near future. We'll give you some news about lifecycle changes of our products and inform you about architectural modifications. One technical note, during the past sessions, we have noticed that GoToWebinar, when we start to display a video, sometimes switches the audio configuration of your system. So now we are live on air, but later we will do the presentations in form of recorded videos. And when we start these presentations and you don't hear any sound, please check your audio settings and adapt them accordingly. The CODESYS Feature Briefing is scheduled twice a year. The next date will be the 20th of March in 2024. More or less synchronously to the Service Pack 20 release. We hope you save the date and will participate again. The briefing will be recorded and published so that you or your colleagues can see them later. And the presentation part follows quite precisely an agenda as we have recorded those presentations. Even if it is recorded, you still can ask your questions using this dialogue of GoToWebinar. Just enter your questions and give us some context that we know to which slide and presentation you refer to, and we will either answer your questions directly or later in the question and answers part. If it's too complicated and we don't know the answer right now, then we will contact you during the next days and answer your questions. Again, we will do user polls relating to the presented topics, and we will share the results at the end of the meeting too. Now let's have a look on the agenda. So the first part is mainly about the programming system. It's about 1 hour. And the second part is about the CODESYS runtime system and add-on features, as you can see it here on the screen. Some information about upcoming releases. I mentioned already Service Pack 20 will be released on 19th of March next year. So as you know, we have one Service Pack a year typically, but we have many patches, about one per month that we will schedule and list on our homepage together with other add-on releases. You know that since the modularization, we are able to release parts of the product independently, and we have created this part or this page on our web page where you can see the list of modules and when they will be released and what content they will have. One announcement regarding lifecycle management. We are currently implementing a new lifecycle management. We will publish it on our homepage, but I will also inform you in the next CODESYS Feature Briefing, so 20th of March, save the date. And we want to make the faces of the products more transparent and announce them in time as soon as there is some changes on the life cycle state of a product. Details will follow. And one last general word from my side, it's regarding the 3S Smart Software Solutions. String as a vendor, you know, our company was named 3S Smart Software Solutions some years before, and we didn't make it to replace this string in all devices and libraries because we feared that we could introduce some incompatibilities there, but we will have a tool support that will allow us to do this now, and step by step we will replace all these strings by the name of CODESYS now, and so this will be without that you have to do something in your applications. Maybe besides some third-party libraries that are using our library interface libraries, they will have to be adapted when these new libraries come out. But you will notice this as soon as you want to use the new libraries. Okay, that was all from my part. Now I would start with my first presentation. It's about the programming system. See you later.
In the CODESYS engineering system, we have been working intensively on the ladder editor in particular. I have already presented the motivation in the last feature briefings, and now in summer we were able to release the first version 0.9 and give it to selected beta customers for testing. We will now roll out this version with the current patch 3 so that it will be available to all of you. At the beginning of the new year, we want to follow up with a version 1.0, which will complete a few missing features. The old combined ladder and function block diagram, LDFBD, is not affected, it still works. Ladder POUs can be converted from the old to the new one, and for FBD you must continue to use the existing editor. For ladder you have a choice, and we recommend the following procedure. Use the new ladder editor for new projects, and also if you are making major changes to the existing project. If you do not plan to make any changes to existing implementations, there is no need to port them to the new editor, at least from our side. On the other programming languages, there have been several updates over the year that contain improvements and mainly bug fixes. We have implemented the following new functionality in the installer, which makes it easier to take advantage of modularization. We deliver many new versions of our add-ons every month, and we always recommend you to use them immediately. On the other hand, we are aware that an application you are working on may already be approved, or that the machine or plant is already delivered, and you can only make minimal changes. In this case, you do not want to take the risk of introducing an unwanted change of behavior through a version update. Another requirement that speaks against constant updating would be that you cannot stop a plant, or only with high effort and costs, and therefore you have to make sure that changes can always be made via online change. Each new version of an add-on can potentially cause the application code to change. In practice, however, there are many add-ons that do not make any changes to the code or do not contribute any code at all. These could be updated without hesitation. We make this transparent by now marking the add-ons. You see this icon that tells you that an update may result in modified application code. We do this by looking at the currently installed and the newest version, and by checking if there have been changes along the entire version path in between. Using this icon, we also mark add-ons that contain security relevant changes. With these new labels, we create a better basis for you to decide between the benefits of the new version and the risk of a change. Older add-ons appear by default as not security relevant, and we have to assume that they affect the code. The deployment server is the counterpart to the installer. It provides setups and packages to the installer and perhaps other artifacts in the future. You will probably not be familiar with the name deployment server, as the only existing instance is currently operated in the background by CODESYS. However, we are currently working on a customizable variant for automation platform customers who produce their own CODESYS variant and add-ons. And this will give them the option of using the installer's update mechanisms for deploying their packages. Now to a rather unpleasant topic. For the licensing of runtimes, but also for the licensing and protection of programming system components, we have successfully relied on the solutions of the company Vibu for many years now. Unfortunately, an incompatibility has crept into the new version that we have to use for licensing the CODESYS Professional Developer Edition. Mr. Reiter will go into this later. This affects us and means that we have caught a hard version dependency to CODESYS Essentials with the PDE and the application composer. The new versions of these add-ons which are released together with CODESYS SP19 patch 3, only work with this and the following versions. The old versions will work only with the preceding ones, but not with the new essential versions. We regret the inconvenience caused, but we have not found a technical way to avoid this. But at least we have taken precautions so that it will not happen again. With Service Pack 19, we have replaced the Chromium package by WebView 2. Due to license terms, we are not allowed to ship the evergreen installer of WebView 2 with the CODESYS setup. This does not matter at all for customers running a more recent version of Windows 10 or even Windows 11, as they already include WebView 2. However, users installing CODESYS on an outdated version of Windows 10 will receive a message prompting them to download and install WebView 2 first. The following improvement for Service Pack 20 is called Sandbox Lite or Eddie's Sandbox, in honor of our head of support Edwin Schwellinger, who strongly desired this feature. Historically, all CODESYS installations on one computer share the repositories for devices, libraries, and so on. On the one hand, this is good because it saves disk space. On the other hand, it has the disadvantage that the installations can influence each other. If we install a new CODESYS version, new artifacts, libraries, devices, and so on are added to the repositories. This can have effects on projects used with the older versions if we do not prevent this by the strict following of certain rules. We will simplify this in the future by asking during the installation whether PC global repositories should be used as it is now, or if local ones should be used that exclude cross-influences on existing installations. A larger sandbox variant is planned for next year. The goal here is that a CODESYS installation can be easily and quickly archived, restored, copied to another PC, or made available to a group of other users. Of course, without cross-influence on other installations, and like all classic installations managed by our installer. Your feedback on our products is very important to us, so we have created a small add-on called CODESYS Usage Analysis, which will be rolled out with patch 4 later this year. It will ask you a maximum of 3 questions every now and then about your experience with CODESYS and your expectations. Your answers will be forwarded to us completely anonymously. You can of course disable this feature, but I hope and ask you to support us with your feedback. This will also influence our future decisions. We plan to also publish results from this on suitable occasions. So far, the scripting interface was based on IronPython 2.7, but since the end of 2022 there is also IronPython 3.4, which we will integrate into and support with our new version.
So welcome back. Through the rest of this event, Martin Decker, my colleague, will guide you. Hello, Martin.
Hi together. Well, Dimmer already mentioned my name. Also, cordial welcome from my side to today's CODESYS Feature Briefing Fall 2023. I will guide you through almost the rest of this feature briefing, and we'll just directly switch to my other colleague, Markus Haberstock, please. So tell us, what's your role? What delights did you bring today?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Markus Haberstock, and I am responsible for the documentation and the CODESYS help. In my presentation today, I'll give you a brief overview about the documentation topics.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. So you'll see the next recording now. Enjoy.
Good day, everyone. Today I will give you a short update on the documentation of the sample projects and the status of the offline help. First of all, about the CODESYS sample projects. A description of all sample projects for our products has been published in the help portal for a short time. You can therefore already access this information today. You can reach these help pages via the examples tile or via the search. The examples are structured by products. On the overview page you will see a short description of the example with a link to the corresponding help page. At the end of the help page you will find the download for the example. Now to the offline help. As you already know, we will again offer an up-to-date offline help for Service Pack 20. The offline help will not be part of the CODESYS standard installation, but it can be installed as an add-on if required. We will offer the offline help in all languages. There will be one package per language. The offline help contains the description of all products, but not the documentation of the libraries. However, as you know, the libraries documentation can be displayed in the Library Manager. Calling the help pages in the Library Manager will be context sensitive in the future. That means by using the F1 key. The format of the offline help will be HTML, though the help pages will be displayed in your internet browser. We will implement a functionality that allows additional help pages from add-ons to be installed in the offline help. We will release the new offline help with Service Pack 20.
Welcome back. Next will be two presentations. Unfortunately, my colleague Bernhard Reiter cannot be here on stage live today, but of course we also recorded his presentations. The first presentation will be about compiler technology in CODESYS, and his second presentation will be about the CODESYS Professional Develop Edition. Enjoy.
In my presentation about the compiler features, I will talk about three different topics today. First, I will introduce a new compiler feature called the so-called project defines. In the second part of the presentation, I will present an already existing feature for a few years, but it is not yet well known, and yet the topic is how to reduce the jitter of online changes in general. And in the last part of the presentation, I want to take a look at the supported CPU architectures in the CODESYS compiler. So generally, what is the project defines feature about? In CODESYS, or generally in application development with CODESYS, there is often the requirement that a machine exists in different variants, and an application or also libraries maybe need adaptations to the specific configuration of the machine, for example. Currently, there are three different possibilities available to make such adaptations in an application, and it depends on your use case which one fits your needs best. So the first feature, which is already available since the probably beginning of version 3, are the so-called library parameters. The idea here is that you say that certain constant values or parameters are declared in a special parameters object in a library and can then be used, for example, as limits for buffers, for array sizes, and similar topics. These constants are global to the complete application, and the concrete values can then be configured in the library manager of the application referencing the library. This is a well-known feature for all of you, I guess. A pretty new feature since Service Pack 18, so introduced last year, are the so-called generic constant variables. The idea is similar to the library parameters, but it allows a fine-grained control of constant values. So in contrast to library parameters, where, as I mentioned, the values can only be set globally for the complete library, for a generic constant, it is possible to set and redefine these constants for each instance of a function block you declare in your application. And the third possibility to adapt your library application to specific device configurations is to use conditional pragmas in the implementation part. So based on compile time defines, you can change the behavior of a function block or of the implementation. Still, with its three possibilities, it was not possible to solve all use cases available. So sometimes you need also the possibility to not only use conditional pragmas in the implementation part, but often customers also request to have the possibility to use conditional pragmas in the declaration parts of function blocks or generally of PAUs and CODESYS. And so we created now this possibility with the so-called project defines. They behave a bit differently to regular defines in CODESYS. So they got a completely new dialog, which will be available in the compiler options and allows you to also here define a list or create a list of defines for, in this case, not only a specific application, but for the complete project. These defines can then be applied to all devices and applications in a project, and it's important to know that they are also available in libraries referenced by the project. So you then have the possibility to do conditional compiling based on this project defines in all applications and or libraries in a certain project. This new feature will be available from Service Pack 20 onwards, which will be released next year. Here is a small example of how this new project defines look in the declaration parts when used. So to make it really clear that not every kind of define can be used for the declaration, we actually introduce a new keyword, the so-called project defined keyword, which you need to use if you want to query this special set of defines. There are certain limitations for this feature. So as I already mentioned, it cannot be set individually per device or per application. So it applies really to the complete project. It's also important to know that if you do conditional compiling in the declaration parts, certain smart coding and IDE features will not be available for the inactive declarations in that case. So for example, cross-references or refactoring will not be available. So if you want to rename this variable X in this example, but this project define is not defined at all in this current application or project, then refactoring will not be available in this case. So this is one of the limitations. The second limit or the third limitation is that it cannot be used to actually change the interface of a function block. So this project defines are only valid in local variable declarations, but not for inputs, outputs, or in-out declarations, for example. The main reason for this limitation is that it would make it very hard for users to understand the library API if, depending on the application, the inputs and outputs of such libraries change, and it's also very hard to document this kind of behavior then for users of your library. Yeah, the second topic is the online changes and generally the issue about jitter in online changes. So mostly the biggest impact on online change time and the jitter on the PLC when doing an online change is when you add new variables to function block instances, for example, because this means that all function block instances created in the application then need to actually be moved to a new memory location by the online change. There is a dialog when doing online changes which informs you about this copy code, as we call it, which needs to be done, and also states how much code needs to be copied or how much data needs to be copied actually for this online change. The actual jitter created then by this operation, of course, depends a lot on the amount of data to be copied and also on the available performance of your device and the timing constraints of your Fieldbus configurations and watchdogs, for example. So in the past, we already searched for ways of how to help our users to reduce with jitters. So a few years ago, we had an idea which we called implicit reference types. It was an experimental feature, and basically the idea was that to chosen instance variables, you could apply an attribute, and this attribute would basically affect that the compiler would create and make this instance variable an implicit reference, and in this way, references would not be affected by the online change. The instances would get smaller and reduce copy code. But this feature had many limitations and was hard to use, and so we decided to not further follow this path and this idea, and this experimental feature will be discontinued from SB20 onwards in the compiler and will be removed completely. But we already added an alternative feature in, I think it was Service Pack 12 in CODESYS, and it's a so-called memory reserve for function block instances. So here the idea is that you do not like create references implicitly from instance data, but that you say that an instance simply has a memory reserve which can be used for adding variables in future online changes. The big advantage of this is, of course, also that no copy code is necessary because the instances can remain in place during the online change and only the new variables are added and initialized. There is a special dialog or view available in CODESYS in the so-called online change memory reserve settings, and I just show here an example of how it might look for a certain application. So it gives you an overview of all function blocks available in your application. It shows you the actual current size of these function blocks, how many instances are available, and then you can configure the memory reserve. And this dialog will update after every online change and show you how much of your memory reserve is still available. Once you run out of this memory reserve, the effect will be that the compiler will then do a regular online change with copy code again and actually copy these instances to new places in memory, but also it will then reset the memory reserve and you can then start again from new with adding new variables and online changes. So this is a very useful feature to get your online changes on the one hand fast in the IDE to compile, but also fast on the runtime with a lot less jitter to execute. So if you did not know this feature yet, please take a look at this dialog and give it a try. The last feature I want to talk about is the supported CPU architectures in CODESYS. We constantly monitor the market for relevant CPU architectures that might become interesting or have become interesting for the PLC market. So in the last years, for example, we added support for the ARM 64-bit CPU architecture. We added long arc architecture, which is mostly relevant in China, for example. And RISC-V is on the horizon. We monitor this new and very popular CPU architecture for relevance for the PLC market. And if the needs arise and customers demand it from us, we will, for example, also implement RISC-V support in the future. On the other hand, from the large number of CPU architectures CODESYS supports, also some lost relevance in the last years or decade. So, for example, the MIPS CPU architecture got discontinued by the creators or MIPS themselves. So no CPUs are manufactured or are in use anymore to date with this instruction set. So already in 2021 we discontinued MIPS, and also 16-bit architectures were very popular in the early days of version 3, but they also lost relevance nowadays because it's ARM, for example, or generally 32-bit CPUs are cheap enough nowadays to be used for most applications. We will continue to clean up our list of supported architectures. So we will enter 4 additional code generators into the so-called servicing phase beginning in March 2024. So this will then affect the Super H and their Xcode generators, also Blackfin, and from Texas Instruments certain DSP code generators. We will completely discontinue the code generator for the CodeFire CPU architecture. So you might now wonder, what exactly does servicing phase for our code generators mean? So the idea is that these code generators will, of course, remain available for existing projects and devices you already created with these CPUs, and you can continue to use these architectures. They will remain available. But we will only fix severe bugs in this architecture, so with code generators, and certain improvements, performance improvements or other features will not be implemented anymore for this code generators. Also, we will not make this code generators anymore available for new devices or customers wanting to create new devices. So the list of available code generators for new projects has been reduced by these 5 code generators listed in the slide before. So far for new compiler features. Thank you very much.
So that was the presentation part on compiler technology, and now you'll directly switch to the next presentation on the CODESYS Professional Developer Edition.
In this presentation, I want to give you a quick overview of the ongoing developments in the CODESYS Professional Developer Edition. I already talked about our big upfront release of the static analysis version 5.0 for CODESYS. It is planned for end of this year or beginning of next year. I will give you a quick summary of the features we are working on in this major version release. So the first big thing is that rules can now already be checked during editing of the project, so that the user gets an immediate response while he's still working on his code and it's still fresh in his memory what he's trying to achieve. This gives a lot better workflow and improved experience when using the static analysis tool. Also, we improved the engine and made the rules smarter. This can, for example, mean, as you can see in this screenshot, that already during compile time or static analysis time, it's possible to determine what kind of values a variable can actually never take or will probably have. This allows a lot improved rule output. So, for example, in this case, we can actually detect during analysis time that the variable I can never reach the value 100. Also, we improved the metrics for code complexity. So on the one hand, a large number of metrics for this use case was already available in previous versions of the static analysis, but only very few of them were used. So now we removed most of this code complexity metrics and only left the McCabe metric, which most users know and understand in our metrics. Additionally, we implemented a new metric called cognitive complexity, which in our opinion is also a lot easier to understand compared to classical metrics like McCabe. And also this new metric can already be checked during precompile time and calculated, and is executable as a standard rule like all the other checks for static analysis can do. So this again gives the possibility for a lot quicker feedback and allows the user to improve his code's complexity and understanding while he's still working on it. Regarding our JIT integration in CODESYS, our next version 1.4 will include a new scripting driver. So this scripting driver, like for our already existing Subversion integration, will support the most common operations for JIT. So cloning repositories, committing, pushing, and piling will be supported, working with branches will be supported, and also in certain cases, when it's automatically possible, merging can be done for a project. On another side note, we are also continuing work on the topic of having the Git repository and file storage human readable. This is currently not the case, as many of you are aware, and this is a topic we have not forgotten, are still investigating and working on, but it is not easy to solve for us, and it's not yet possible to give a clear timeline when a human readable storage for Git will be available. But as I said, we are still working on this topic and hope to provide a solution in the midterm for this. CODESYS UML is a feature of the Professional Developer Edition, which is already available for quite some time, but it never really gained traction with our users. So we decided that UML will be discontinued and no longer be continued to be developed or maintained as part of the Professional Developer Edition. So this means that it will remain available, so projects you created with UML can also be continued to be used in the future. And we will make a final release in the first quarter of 2024 to fix a number of major issues for this final version before we reduce the maintenance of it. In the midterm, new projects should not use UML at all anymore, and if you have libraries or templates containing UML state chart, this should be converted to other programming languages eventually. Finally, we did a technical upgrade of our licensing protection for the Professional Developer Edition. Usually I would not mention this kind of architecture or infrastructural topic here in the feature briefing, but in this case it has certain implications for users of the Professional Developer Edition. So the first change you might notice is a behavioral change of when the license for the features is checked. In the past, the license was already checked when you started CODESYS, and if you did not have a valid license for the PDE or Professional Developer Edition add-ons, then you could not load them and were informed immediately by CODESYS. This will change now with the next release of the add-ons, and the missing license is not checked already at startup of CODESYS, but will only be reported the first time a user tries to actually use a feature of the Professional Developer Edition add-ons. Also, and this is the bigger implication, all add-ons released will require at least the version 3.5 SP19 patch 3 to be installable. And on the other hand, the versions already available right now, which are released, will not be installable on this version. So there is a major compatibility break here at this point with SP19 patch 3. And to ease the transition for our users and not have like a gap where certain PDE features are not usable for you, we will have a big bundled release of SP19 patch 3 and all Professional Developer Edition add-ons at the end of September. So when patch 3 is released, you will have a working version of all Professional Developer Edition add-ons for this version. Also, I just want to state clearly at this point that this does not affect the licensing model or the pricing of the Professional Developer Edition. There are no changes here. It really is only a technical upgrade or technical change of our licensing protection. Thank you for your attention.
Welcome back from the presentations. The next presentation will be done by myself, as I'm also the responsible product owner and product manager for the CODESYS automation server. After the presentation on the CODESYS automation server, we have prepared 2 little polls for you, but I'll explain that after the presentation. The presentation will start in a couple of seconds. Enjoy.
Since the last CODESYS feature briefing about half a year ago, there are a couple of new developments around the CODESYS automation server, and that's why we're going to have a look at some recent developments, some future developments, and how you can directly benefit from those developments. Already mentioned at the last feature briefing in spring was the highlighting and visibility of updates. The requirement here was to make it easier to recognize if there were application updates available for certain projects and applications that run on controllers, and to make it easier to distinguish between several applications. We added for this purpose a couple of new views to the automation server user interface, added a couple of new functionalities, which now makes it easier for you to get the information you're looking for. In the user interface, in the list view, this results in this new line showing you which application currently runs on a PLC. In the tabular view of the list view, you can, by using this settings icon here, add new columns to the table. A column for a project that is connected to a PLC, the application that runs on the PLC, and also the version, so the commit of the application that runs on the PLC, and you can also add a new column for this update icon, which makes it clear if there's a newer application version available for a certain application that runs on a PLC. Also, in the list view of a PLC, you can see which application runs on the PLC, and if you go to the detailed view of an application, you can select a version, select a commit, and immediately see if this very commit already runs on a PLC, or if the application runs on a PLC but in a different commit, or if the application does not run on the PLC at all. Another thing that was already mentioned in the last feature briefing, but which hasn't been in the automation server yet, was that we now offer notifications if you try to connect using your development system to a local PLC that at the same time has connection to the automation server, which may result in some strange behavior and may lead to some unnecessary troubleshooting. That's why we're showing a notification in this case now in the development system, which avoids unnecessary troubleshooting and makes you aware of this possible misbehavior, which actually is no misbehavior. So in the development system, if you try to connect to a PLC using a local gateway and the PLC at the same time is connected to an automation server, you get this message that there is an additional connection to the automation server and that local changes you perform may be overwritten. Another improvement that is also to do with the CODESYS Automation Server connector is its facelift. So the requirement was to make it easier to recognize icons and menu commands, to know what they actually mean, and that's why we redesigned the connector plugin, which makes it easier to understand certain menu icons and makes it easier to understand all the status icons that are used now in the development system. So here's a screenshot of several menu commands. Here the new icons, the text which clearly indicate their function, and also the status icon now gives you a clear indication about whether a project is already connected to an automation server or not. We added a new start page to the automation server to give you a better overview of existing features, functionalities of the automation server, and to give you some first steps about how you can start with the automation server. For this purpose, we split the start page into 3 sections, which makes it easier now for you to onboard when you're new to the automation server, which gives you a quick overview about all the possible features, functionalities, things you can do with the automation server. And also we added a lot of direct links to the detailed documentation of the automation server. So that's what it looks like here. As I mentioned, split into 3 parts. The first part on the left-hand side is first steps, basic functionalities. Then there's an additional tab, advanced features, where you get even more details and links of what the automation server is capable of. The middle tile here is about the data analyzer, its core features, how you get started, and direct link to your personal data analyzer. And the last one here on the right hand side is about all help topics, leading you to the documentation, for example, explaining what this question mark icon means and providing you with some more links to CODESYS Talk, for example. A feature that's new since the last update of the automation server is the device lock. This was requested quite a lot of times because people wanted to access their PLC lock without a CODESYS development system, without manually establishing a connection to a PLC and so on. And that's why we made the PLC lock browser-based. That means you can easily and fast use the PLC lock now without the necessity for a development system. You don't have to create a initial CODESYS project and you don't have to establish the connection to the PLC because the automation server already knows it. In the user interface, in the PLC details, there now is a new tab called Locks, which gives you the possibility to display all logs for warnings, errors, exceptions, and so on. Also, you can select or deselect different components and different loggers. And of course, you can also activate auto scroll. So the most up-to-date entries will always be here at the top of the list. The features we've seen so far are already part of the automation server, but of course, we're also developing some new features, some new improvements for the automation server. First of all is the possibility to start, stop, and reset applications on different ways without the necessity to use a CODESYS development system or to log in to a PLC. To make this possible, we implemented the functionality to provide you with the necessary user interfaces, which you can then use from every device which has a browser. That means you could even use your smartphone for starting, stopping, or resetting applications, which in the end saves you a lot of time. Another feature we're going to support with the automation server is the recipe management. That means you can use recipes from within the automation server, and it will also be possible, and that goes hand in hand with the recipe management, to use custom files on PLCs and to manage them with the automation server. This will happen in 2 steps and will also add some additional functionality related to the file management on PLC. And by using these new features, you will have the full control over recipe management from the browser, and you will gain enhanced capabilities through this new user-defined files, which you can now use from the automation server. Another thing I would like to mention, although it's just internal, is the Edge Communication rework. The Edge Communication is a service which is responsible for communication of different components in the automation server, and we want to make the service state-of-the-art, want to gain a high scalability, and want to make it better maintainable. And for this purpose, we decided already last year to completely re-implement this complete service. And benefits of this re-implementation are that it's more stable than before and that it's easier for us to extend it. That means that it's easier for us to provide you with new features which are based on this service. Another feature we're currently developing is the certificate management, which will make it easier to handle certificates in the realm of CODESYS. For this purpose, we provide you with a central page giving you an overview of all PLCs and all certificates that are available on those PLCs, with additional information on those certificates. And also we're going to support certificate signing requests also in different development steps that will come over time. And your benefit is that you always have an overview over all the certificates that run on your PLCs. If you want, you can be notified about expirations of certificates, and this whole thing will make it now much more easy and clearer to handle certificates and facilitate the workflow with certificates and CODESYS. Here's a preview how it could look like. So there's an overview with all the PLCs and the certificates that are on the PLCs, also the scenarios they're used for. This colors here indicating if the certificate is still valid or if it will expire within the next month or if a certificate already has expired. In addition, you have different options for actions. Here you can download certificates from PLCs or upload certificates, or you can also compute new certificates on PLCs by using this add button here. Another request from a lot of you was to make it possible to use the automation server on premises on your own infrastructure, so not based on public cloud infrastructure. Well, the solution is that we're going to provide this possibility for you to host it on your own infrastructure, giving you the full control and also, of course, the full responsibility over this entire system. Hardware infrastructure, the automation server that runs on it, which makes you independent from third parties and doesn't make it necessary anymore to have an internet connection or a connection to some public or even private cloud infrastructure. Furthermore, we're gonna add some new features to the automation server regarding the CODESYS virtual control. We want to make it easier to manage a large number of virtual controls and also the host systems that underlie those virtual controls and network interfaces, field buses that also play a role in this whole context. For this purpose, we implement a lot of new features to the automation service, create some new interfaces, and of course create some comprehensive UIs for the whole administration of those features. Your benefit is that you will have a comprehensive and also at the same time user-friendly handling possibility of virtual controls. Here's one screenshot from this whole area virtual devices. So we're in a subsection here, virtual controls. And this screenshot shows how you can easily choose a host system on which then, coming from a container image, new virtual control can be added. In the next step, the virtual control can be started, and by going to this detail settings here, you can do some more detailed configurations of this virtual control. For example, do some network mapping, path mappings between container and host system, and so on. That's it so far from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Welcome back from the presentations. And now I'd like to lead over to my colleague, Kevin Ketterle. Kevin, please tell us what delights bring you to us today.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm product owner for CODESYS Go, and for the next few minutes, I'd like to show you some insights about the CODESYS Go development. This is probably the only product in this lineup today which is not released yet, but nevertheless, I will give you some insight about the current progress. So have fun.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Kevin. We're curious.
You're welcome.
Let's dive in. Enjoy.
I would like you to provide with some information about the current status of CODESYS Go development. Let's start with the most important of all languages in IEC 61131.3, namely structured text. The corresponding text editor is the same one used by Visual Studio Code. This software component is called Monaco and can be customized to almost any language, including our structured text. So far, we support syntax highlighting, theming, and code completion, which is also known as IntelliSense, although the latter is currently not available in declaration parts yet. Our development team not only implements the features, but also ensures that the quality is already high and remains high through automated testing. The decision to integrate a ready-made text editor opens up many possibilities for future features that are not yet available in version 3 partially, such as code snippets, displaying extensive documentation when hovering over a symbol with the mouse, code lens, or code formatting. If you are familiar with these terms, you know how much they support daily development work. And if not, that's okay too. We will show these features in detail once they are finished. The next important milestone on the way to a usable programming system is library support. This is crucial to enable developers to create modular controller software and also to implement advanced features in CODESYS Go, such as device configurators, visualization, or motion, which heavily rely on libraries. In the past few weeks, we have managed to incorporate support for compiled libraries and library repositories in CODESYS Go, both based on the formats and structures of CODESYS version 3. This fulfills the requirement that the same libraries can be used for both CODESYS generations. However, there are also changes to the existing concept. In version 3, libraries are almost exclusively inserted or deleted interactively via the library manager. In CODESYS Go, this is done in a textual file called libraries.json. So don't worry, eventually we will also include a convenient editor for this file in CODESYS Go, but for now it works without it. In version 3, library references such as placeholder or star references were resolved implicitly and automatically. This is convenient, but a bit opaque and has the inherent problem: if you update or delete libraries in your global repository, the next time you open a project, silently different library versions may be used. In CODESYS Go, resolving library dependencies is an explicit operation, and the result is saved in another text file called libraries.log.json. As long as you do not perform a deliberate library resolution again, the compiler will consider exactly the references specified in the libraries.log.json file, regardless of what is available in the repositories. Both files can be put under version control. This ensures that the combination of the project and the used libraries there can be accurately reproduced at any time. Furthermore, we will copy the libraries used from the repository into the project's workspace directory. This is to achieve that we no longer need the project archive feature known from version 3 in Go. The user can simply take the entire workspace directory and automatically have the content of such an archive. The aforementioned files bring me back to the project structure of CODESYS Go. As mentioned several times in the past, it is a fundamental concept of CODESYS Go to manage the components of a project in individual files, which are, whenever possible, textual and human readable. In the image on the left side, we can see a screenshot of a project as displayed in the workspace navigator, and on the right side, the corresponding directory structure in the file system. Recently, we have refined the file formats for properties in CODESYS Go. In version 3, there are typically 3 nodes in the project tree for a property, 1 for the property itself and 2 for the get and set accessors. If we were to directly transfer this structure to the Go format, it would require 3 files and 1 directory, which adds significant overhead considering that the majority of properties consist of only 1 or a few lines of code. For this reason, we have decided to consolidate everything into 1 file. This results in a limitation compared to version 3. Both the getter and the setter must be written in the same language. Therefore, it is not possible to implement the getter in structured text and the setter in ladder diagram. We believe that this limitation does not matter in practice.
Welcome back from the presentation, and we'll come to the next guest now, Mr. Andreas Kehrer. Andy, what did you bring for us today?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. My name is Andreas Kehrer. I'm the product manager for the runtime system. And today I want to show you the news on our runtime system and, of course, for all our safety products, especially the Virtual PLC and the Virtual Safe PLC.
Thank you. So in the next minutes, you'll first see a presentation on CODESYS runtime, followed by, again, a little poll, and then you'll see a presentation on safety topic. Enjoy the presentations.
In my presentation on the topic CODESYS runtime system, I want to start with the improvements which we will release with Service Pack 20. Beside of that, I want to talk about the independent release cycle in the second part, and in the third part about the virtual control. But let's start about the improvements in the runtime system. First of all, I want to talk about the enabling of a password policy. That means that we have a password policy in place since SP19, but it was on default deactivated. Now we will change the default inside of the CODESYS Control CFG file, so you can stay on the current version that it is disabled. You can configure it, but our advice is to enable it to enhance the security of the devices. Second feature is a new +C shell command to enable the debug log filter. This helps, for example, the support teams to debug and to diagnose problems on the PLC. You can enable a debug filter during the runtime and get more debug messages in there. Another feature is the mempool system trace. So you can see all mempool actions inside of the system trace, and so also diagnoses mempool logs or delays because of shared resources. Another feature is the improvement of the file download. By now, each file is downloaded separately, especially for the visualization. All the images are downloaded separately. We will improve that and will download it as a bulk, in a bulk, so the download performance will be improved. The next is the support of the VxWorks ARM 64-bit version. It's a new standard platform which we support and release with every version, starting from SP19 patch 2. Let's get to the next version. We have done an update of the OpenSSL version. We came from version 1.1.1 and go to version 3.1.0. This is because we encountered some performance issue in the version 3.0. So we skipped that version and went directly to the version 3.1.0, where we see that the performance is comparable to the version 1.1.1. The next is the LDAP support, which we want to provide, in that case for the Linux devices. We decided that we will not implement the LDAP protocol inside of the runtime system, but we will provide a backend for Linux and for the PAM inside of the Linux to connect the runtime system user management to the user management of the device itself, or of the operating system of the device. Next is the support of the network licenses, which is especially for the virtual control very important, but this I want to talk about in the next or in a separate part. Another improvement is inside of the time zone handling. By now it was some kind of inconsistent, the handling. There we will improve the handling and provide it so that you can use time zones more easily from IC. So there will be improvement in the interfaces. And furthermore, we will adapt the implementation inside of the runtime system to the new handling, especially for logging and for alarms and things like that. Let's have also a look to the improvements for the Control SL product, not only the runtime system core. Here we have a new product which is based for the Raspberry Pi. So we will have a pure 64-bit binary. We will release it with the next version, with the version 4.10.0.0 for the licensing. So all existing licenses can be used for both versions of the runtime system, 32-bit version and for the 64-bit version of the runtime. The next is the support of the DNP3 protocol, which will be also supported starting from version 4.10.0.0. Next is an update inside of the RTE. So we have updated the Vivo SDK, which is inside of the RTE, which enables us to also support the application-based licenses. Another feature which we want to provide is target visualization for Control SL. That means that with the version 4.11, we will provide our target visualization as a dynamic component for our generic or runtime system products, Control Linux SL and Control Linux ARM SL. Last but not least, we have a new minimal version check for the CodeMeter runtime. This is just to ensure that also not only the runtime system, but also the CodeMeter runtime system is up to date. Now I'll switch over to the independent release cycle. What's all behind of this is that we plan to release the runtime system SDK independent from the IDE. So it will not follow anymore the versions of the IDE. So the SP20 version will be the last one. And then we will release a version 4.0.0.0 of the runtime system, which is compatible with all IDE versions which we release. The benefit is that we have major releases every 2 or 3 months. So all the bug fixes we do during the year are immediately available in a released version. Not only the bug fixes, but of course all the new features, the improvements, and everything we do is directly released on the latest version. That means that patching issues back to older versions like we do it today is not necessary anymore. You can always switch to the latest version and then you have all the bug fixes available. And of course, all the features. To support this, it's of course very important to have a backward compatibility. This is why we extended our testing for the runtime system and for the IDE. We have we are introducing a programming guideline for robust IC applications to ensure that existing IC application can run on every new runtime system. And of course, new features will be introduced by configuration. So if a new feature is introduced, it's on default deactivated, and it's up to you to enable new features in a configuration file. As an example, you have the enabling of the password policy on the default. If you stay on the old configuration, the password policy is deactivated in the configuration file. And if you decide to use that feature, you update to the latest configuration file and there the feature is enabled. Let's come to the next topic. It's the virtual control. Here we want to talk about the current status. By now we have the runtime system in a container running on an x86 or x64 and on ARM. It's functional complete. It's running in Podman or in Docker, so actually in any container engine. We've tested the real-time behavior of a runtime system in a container, and what we see is that there is almost no difference between a native running runtime system and a runtime system in a container. So there is actually no overhead to put the runtime into a container. What we're doing now is testing the network access via virtual switches. So this is another important topic, how to access the network, the industrial network from your virtual PLC. And just for you to know, we will release the first prototypes with the version 4.11. Last but not least, we have a new deployment tool for the CODESYS Virtual Control, and of course I want to show that to you. You can see it here as a screenshot. You have a communication page you can deploy either from a local file system or from a public or private repository directly. You can configure your runtime system from that deployment tool, and you can control and command your virtual PC from that dialog.
We'll now directly switch to the second presentation my colleague Andreas Kehrer made. It's about safety in CODESYS. Enjoy.
I want to start my presentation today to the topic CODESYS Safety with the CODESYS Safety tool qualification. As mentioned in the previous feature briefing, the CODESYS itself consists of a CODESYS Essential and quite a few add-ons. The original idea was to qualify each of the add-ons and also the CODESYS Essentials. But the result of our investigation is that only 3 out of the 110 add-ons are actually safety critical. So we only require 3 qualifications. For the safety add-on itself, of course, for the EtherCAT add-on because of the EDS import of FSOE devices, and the Profinet add-on because of the import of the GSDML file of ProfiSafe devices. As a result, CODESYS Essential is not safety critical. And this has a lot of benefits for us for the release and the efficiency of a release. This is because from safety point of view, you can run a safety add-on actually on any CODESYS Essential. Of course, we need some functional tests so that it's actually working, but from the safety point of view, it's not necessary to add any investigations, FMEAs, or tests at that point. And that makes a release of a safety add-on for a CODESYS Essential much easier because TÜV is not involved at that point. The current status is that we have almost closed all the FMEAs. They're at the TOV. The TOV had already reviewed our investigations and gave already feedback on it. Last but not least, we have some testing gaps which we need to close. Actually, we do not have gaps, but we have quite a few manual tests, and our goal is to have only automatic tests for the first release. This is also very beneficial for the release itself because no manual testing is necessary. The tests can be executed much faster. Actually, today we can execute the tests overnight. Let's have a look to the functional side. We will add the support of the CODESYS 64-bit. So you can install and run CODESYS Safety on CODESYS 64-bit. But we will cancel the support of the 32-bit version of CODESYS. This is simply because the CODESYS 32-bit is almost not used anymore. Next feature is that we will have the child application optional. So by now, in many cases, child application was mandatory. Now you can put everything in one application, in your main application, and the child application is not necessary anymore. Next thing is that the installation itself is less restrictive, and the installation of the safety add-on itself is much easier without additional safety requirements on it. Now the next topic I want to talk about is the ProfiSafe version 2.6 maintenance update 2. This is a feature which we also want to support for the version 3.5 SP20. For the supported feature, of course, we will support version 2.4 and 2.6 devices. We will integrate the tool calling interface into CODESYS so that you can connect to device tools and to set parameters of a ProfiSafe device. The device tool itself will be delivered by the ProfiSafe device vendor. And we also will support the remote I/O profile for ProfiSafe and the base ID for ProfiSafe. The base ID will be supported in a basic version in the first step, where you can set the base ID in your IC application only. In the next step or following step, we will also make the base ID as a parameter, so you can use a parameterization tool to set the base ID. Last but not least, the reaction on the device fault. This is a feature which is described in the standard, but only in the annex. It's a useful feature how to handle device faults, and we will support it with the new ProfiSafe version. Let's come to the last topic for this presentation, the CODESYS Virtual Safe Control LSL. So this is a safe PLC purely in software running on standard hardware. What you can see here is the software architecture of the safe PLC. It is shown in a parallel way, but it is executed sequentially in one task on one core on a standard hardware. You can see we are on the left side, we have some inputs. We are using the coded processing technology to encode the data. Then we have an encoded execution in the yellow channel, and we have a normal execution in the red channel. And at the end, we have an epsilon gate, which combines the results of each calculation and generates a valid output message. As you can see, inside of each channel, we not only have the coded processing diagnosis, but some additional diagnosis to enhance the PFH value, which is currently at 10 power of 9 minus 9, which is a very good value for a safe PLC. Let's have a look to the features. We have the safety using the coded processing technology of the company Silistra. We are running, or we are able to run on a commercial off-the-shelf hardware. We have no requirements. The detailed concept of the solution is already approved by the TÜV. We are waiting for an updated report at any time. The product itself runs without or with containerization. In the first product, we will run it with containerization, but it's not mandatory. And as I said, the PFH is below 10 to the power of -9. This is a very good value. Maybe just for you as background information, the PFH value is the probability of dangerous failures per hour, and the CO3 standard requires a value below 10 to the power of -7, and we are at -9, so we are really at a good level at that point. And last but not least, we should have a look to the performance of the system, because of all the calculation and the additional diagnosis which we have to implement. It was a critical question. So we have run a test using a safe application with 50 active ProfiSafe connections, which are exchanging data. We added 100 PLC open function blocks and 100 additional operations and a cycle time of 10 milliseconds. And as I said, we can run it on a commercial off-the-shelf hardware. In that case, we run it on Intel i7 CPU. And the overall result, as you can see at the bottom, is around 8.7 milliseconds. This is an acceptable result. So we are in the expected range of the execution time. At the moment, we have implemented all the required diagnosis, and depending on the the results of the TÜV, it might be that we maybe also can remove some of the diagnosis and also keep the PFH values. So we actually hope that we can even improve that value. Okay, that's it for me on the CODESYS safety topic.
Welcome back from the safety world. Next in the row is my colleague Tanja Hafmeier. Tanja, stage is yours. What did you bring for us today?
Hi together. My name is Tanja Hafmeier, and I'd like to introduce you into our new application-based business model.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Let's
Thank you.
dive into the presentation.
Today in my presentation about the application-based business model, I would like to give you an insight about three main topics. First of all, why we decided to implement a new business model. Second, I would like to introduce you into the software metrics dialog in CODESYS. And last but not least, I want to give you a little help on how you choose the best your license if you do not know your application yet. At the beginning of August this year, we launched a new pricing model for our end-user installable licenses. And what made us change from our old business model to a new one was the fact that our old pricing model was simply not contemporary anymore. Our license prices were entirely dependent on the hardware used. The key point of this move was that from now on, the size and complexity of the application rather than the hardware platform would determine the price of a soft PLC. I need to clarify the assumption of some customers that this must be a hidden price increase, because this is simply not true. In fact, our new model is just way more transparent. The change can work both ways. For example, simple applications on an IPC tend to become cheaper, while very complex applications on ARM-based systems may become more expensive. In any case, the price fits the machine that is being automated and thus reflects the benefits of CODESYS. The CODESYS application-based runtime licenses offer our customers truly hardware independent licensing, and application-based licenses do scale with the scope of the application, which is defined by the number of I/O channels, the number of Fieldbus instances, the tags visualized, code size, and additional options such as SoftMotion. Included in each class is a small visualization with 128 tags, OPC/UA with 512 tags, and the data source manager, and 3 years of free 3 years of free runtime system updates. At the heart of the application-based licenses are 8 main levels to choose from. These are these ones here, plus, as already said, optional add-ons for advanced functionality. The application-based licenses start at a very low price of 29 euros for the basic S for small applications, and our largest available class is currently the Control Performance L for 599 euros. And if needed, easy license upgrades are provided by us. So in case your application grows, your license can grow align with the application. The outcome of our new business model is a very economical and transparent licensing model, not only for us, also for the customer. So the same application can now be running on a powerful IPC or on a low power Linux Edge device with the same license at the same low price. Application-based licenses are available for all Control SL platforms from runtime version 4900 and the CODESYS development system SP19 patch 1 or newer. From January next year, CODESYS Soft PLCs will no longer be licensed per device, but depending on the application. You do not have to wait till January though to try out our new business model. It is already available at our store. We offer this licensing model primarily to end users of standard devices. However, if there is interest, we will also offer this new pricing model to companies that manufacture devices themselves. It is also very important to note that existing licenses under the old pricing model will still work on all of the old CODESYS versions and also for all future CODESYS versions. Then I get to the next topic, the dialogue with which the software metrics are determined. The device view in the CODESYS development system displays the details of the application scope in a CODESYS project for licensing. And if you cannot see any metrics yet, this may be because you have not yet logged in and compiled the application. After you have compiled, all of the information will be available. Here in the center column, you will find the values that are allowed on the device according to the license. And on this particular example or device, control standard M was activated. And in addition, a SoftMotion with 4-axis and 1 interpolator license. Also, the Visu contains normally by default 128 tags. Here, an additional Visu M was activated. You see that here because it's 2048 tags instead of 128. In the left column here, you see the actual values you used. If you want to know how the metrics are calculated, you can check out our online help, and you will find a lot of information to figure out how the metrics are counted. Then also we collected the frequently asked questions that you can find in our CODESYS store. And here you also see how, for instance, visualization and OPC UA tags are calculated. If you realize, for instance, that you have purchased a license that is too small, you can easily purchase an upgrade license through our store. Just log in with your credentials and then check out for upgrade licenses. Choose in the drop-down menu which license you already bought, you already activated on your device, and then add the new license to your shopping cart. The price is then calculated from the price of your first purchase minus the new price of the larger license. After that, you only have to activate your license via Web Depot or our license manager. Also in the store, you do not only find the new license model, but also a 30-day trial license with which you can test your application. 30 days free of charge. In addition, our demo mode of 2 hours for the runtime system and 30 minutes for the field buses is of course still available. In addition, I really want to give you a small note regarding the license software metrics editor. It has been there in earlier CODESYS versions already, but the dialog doesn't work for older versions of CODESYS than SP19 patch 1. Neither for old licenses of our old licensing model. You're probably wondering now how to best choose your license if you don't know your application yet. The best way is simply to ask yourself the questions in the order of the features as they are listed in our overview here. First, you should ask yourself which Fieldbus you use and how many instances you need. For example, if you have 2 EtherCAD instances, you only can choose between Control Standard L to Performance L. And in addition, if your system has a 3000 digital input or output signals, only Performance M and L are left. In case of doubt, you can go for the smaller license and upgrade to the larger license if needed. And further examples of how to find the right license class and general information about the application-based licenses can be also found here in our CODESYS store.
The next presentation will be held by my colleague Bernhard Reiter. As I already mentioned, Bernhard unfortunately cannot be here today, so we'll directly jump into the recording of his presentation.
Regarding the communication features in CODESYS, I will give you an update of our OPC UA, DNP3 and BugNet developments. Regarding OPC UA, we released a new version of the communication add-on in July of this year. Version 4.4 was mostly a maintenance release with bug fixes, but also contained some small improvements. The biggest of them is the possibility to now see a detailed description of the number of symbols exported for a certain symbol set configuration in the new communication manager. This allows you to see, as mentioned, the total number of symbols exported, but also gives you the possibility to drill down into all the variables and type definitions to see where exactly the big portions or big chunk of symbols are generated in your configuration. This is a very interesting feature which was requested for a long time by our users. Regarding the communication manager with new symbol sets I just showed, this is a feature which was already released like 1.5 years ago, and it is meant to replace the old symbol configuration editor in the midterm. So eventually this old symbol configuration is or will be deprecated, and in consequence this means that we will not implement any big improvements anymore for the old symbol configuration editor. Severe bugs will of course still be fixed, but for use cases related to Opus UA especially, the new symbol set configurators below the communication manager should be used from now on for your new projects. We did a great amount of work in these new editors to improve the usability and the workflows as well. So yeah, give them a try and let us know if there's any major features missing which you are used to from the old symbol configuration editor. Regarding the DNP3 communication protocol, we are in the final phases of implementing it, and the release is scheduled for the end of October. The initial version will support the usage of the CODESYS PLC as an outstation only in this first initial release. And as already mentioned in previous feature briefings, the support of DNP3 will be implemented as a plain function block library, so no configurators will be available in this first initial version. The BugNet release of the big version 2.0 is also mostly done now, and we hope to be able to release the version 2.0 also at the end of this year. It's a pretty big new version because it implements the new standard version from 2020, which yeah, is equivalent to protocol revision 25. Also here, please see previous feature briefings where I talked in more detail about the upcoming changes in BugNet. Here just the quick update that the work is mostly done, and that using this version will be required for the certification of new devices from 2024 onwards. Thanks for your attention.
The next presentation will be held from my colleague Hilmar Panzer again. As you've already seen him before at the introduction, he'll not be here in front of the camera again. We'll directly jump into the recording of his presentation about Fieldbus technology in CODESYS.
Here we have improved our J1939 solution by implementing the safety extensions. Besides that, usability improvements of the editors have been made, for example, copying and pasting of parameter groups and signals. Then a check has been implemented that runs during the compilation process and detects inconsistent parameter group definitions. Especially the case when you don't use a pre-built database but edit yourself has been improved too. Also, exponential notation when importing DBC files is now supported. All in all, a lot of small things that increase the fun factor when using the program have been done. In the coming year, we will work on CAN-FD, but at first only for the CODESYS Communication protocol. That means the communication between programming system and runtime. There are no plans yet to support FD in our CAN-Open solution. Talking about CAN-Open, just about a month ago there was a new CAN-Open version which mainly contained bug fixes. Likewise, we have released a new version of Modbus for which the same applies. And we also worked intensively on Profinet. The support of fast startup is worth mentioning here in particular. This enormously reduces the startup time of devices that support it. It is a great help, especially when you are working with optional devices that log on and off frequently during runtime, for example in a tool changer. At the same time, the port configuration has been extended. You can now make further settings like setting the baud rate fixed or deactivate a port completely. For the next year, we are planning certification support in the context of Profinet for use with virtual control. We are participating in a working group at the P&O for this. And then the S2 redundancy for the Profinet devices planned. For IO Link, we are in these days finalizing a new version with bug fixes. Also on Ethernet IP we have been busy. Most recently we made a release with version 4.1, which allows to pass conformance test 19.1 on suitable hardwares. In addition, this version contains an API to access the configuration assemblies from the application. Furthermore, the adapter automatically adjusts to a change of the IP address. For example, if a DHCP client is active on the device and sets the address. And the adapter is now also able to persist objects on devices that do not have retain memory, using instead the file system for this purpose. Next year, the connection API is on our roadmap, which will give access to the status and other properties of the connections. We will also make necessary adjustments to be compatible with the new conformance test when available. Of course, corrections and improvements were also made for EtherCAT. These two versions have been released this year.
Now we have one live guest here in front of the camera, my colleague Georg Seidel. Georg, tell us what's your role and what topic are you going to talk about today?
Yes, my role is product owner of CODESYS SoftMotion, and I'm here to tell you about the news and about our roadmap of CODESYS SoftMotion.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So let's dive into the presentation. Thanks, Georg.
In this presentation, I'd like to inform you about the new features of SoftMotion. I have three topics. First are triggers for robotics. Next, I'll talk about look-ahead functions for robotics. And last, I'd like to inform you about our current work in progress. With triggers, we cover the following use case. You have a machine, for example, a laser cutting machine, and you want to activate or deactivate the laser depending on the position of the robot on the programmed path. And the robot should not stop for this action. For this use case, we have a new function block group prepared trigger that allows you to define so-called trigger points on the path. There are three ways to define trigger points. First is by absolute distance, for example, 8 millimeters after the start of the movement or 8 millimeters before the end of the movement. Next, you can define them by a relative position, for example, 0.4, 40% after the start of the movement. And last, you can define them by defining a plane in space. The trigger point will be placed on the movement where the movement first intersects this plane. Beside the position of the trigger point, the timing of the action that you want to execute is crucial. And there are two things that are important for the timing. First, the time resolution of the triggers is independent of the task interval. The task interval may be 4 milliseconds or 1 millisecond, but the time resolution of the triggers is much higher if you have outputs with a high time resolution. For example, it's possible to command a new output value in a microsecond time resolution with our trigger interface. And second, it's important to be able to react on a trigger before the access group reaches the trigger point. For example, if you want to turn on the laser and the laser has a dead time of 30 milliseconds, you want to activate the laser exactly 30 milliseconds before the access group reaches the position. This is made possible by our new function block group read trigger. The function block has an output trigger time that you can see here, and this output will show you how much time there's left until the trigger point will be reached. This makes it possible to react on the trigger in your application at exactly the right time. For example, 200 milliseconds before the trigger point is reached. What else is important for triggers? We support multiple triggers for each movement. The maximum forecast duration is configurable. If you define the value to 300 milliseconds, it is guaranteed that you will be informed 300 milliseconds in advance. Another important thing is how triggers are treated during blending between movements. Here you can see three movements, three lines. The dashed black lines here this is the first line, the second line, and the third line. The black line here is the blended movement. And in blue we see a trigger point, maybe defined by a distance from the start of this movement. And after blending, this trigger point will be projected to the blended movement. Next, I'd like to talk about the new look-ahead functions. There are two new functions. First is a new function block group read remaining trajectory duration. This function block can be used to query how long the current movement will take until it's finished. You have the output remaining duration and movement ID, and this together tells you which movement will finish in which duration. The time in which this works is again this forecast duration. So if you configure a forecast duration of 300 milliseconds, you will be informed 300 milliseconds in advance. The next function is reading the path velocity in the future. The function block group read path dynamics is not new, but the input time offset has been added. This makes it possible to read the path velocity, let's say 200 milliseconds into the future. A use case would be controlling a glue dispenser, which must dispense the glue proportional to the robot velocity and which has a dead time of, let's say, 200 milliseconds. Last, I'd like to talk about our current work in progress. The main work we are doing right now is implementing the override for our single axis and master-slave function blocks like move absolute, move velocity, MC cam in, and so on. We implement the standard PSC function block MCZ override. The reason we didn't implement it so far is that many use cases of override could already be done with our part 1 solution. For example, you could restart each movement, each cycle with a new velocity. However, for some users, using the set override function block is more convenient, so we decided not to implement this feature. It also interacts well with the group set override functionality from robotics, by the way. We plan to release this feature end of this year with the version 4.16. What are our plans for the near future? The main focus of our roadmap will be G-code programming for robotics. Let's have a short look on our CNC and our robotics solution. The CNC allows you to define the geometry, the path, very precisely using G-code. On the other hand, it doesn't take into account the dynamic limits of the axis, for example, maximum velocity, acceleration, or jerk. The robotics, on the other hand, can limit the maximum axis velocity, acceleration, and jerk, and also, if you have a dynamic model, the torque or force of each axis. The path of a robotics application is usually much simpler than for the CNC. Often for pick and place, you just have a few wire points and do blending between them. So our plan is to combine the advantages of both products, of both solutions, and to allow to use the CNC for reading G-code, for executing, for example, true radius correction on the path, and then use the robotics and the improved trajectory planning to execute this path. Now I'm finished with my presentation and like to thank you for your attention.
The next presenter, the next topic will be my colleague Ulf Schüdemann. Ulf, nice to have you here. What are you going to present for us today?
Hello together. I'm the new product owner of application products, and I will show you a product which uses for the first time the new feature of var generic constants. And there will be a product which was announced as part of the communication package, will be released as a separate product based on the modularization we are doing. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ulf. Let's have a look at this interesting topic. So we'll start the presentation again.
I will tell you about the latest developments in the field of application technology. First, there are new string libraries. Then I'll show you a high-level API for UPC UA client. And finally, I will give you some updates on smaller developments. The CODESYS string libraries were released in June. They are a new add-on with libraries for string operations in IEC applications. strings that are UTF-8 encoded and have unlimited length, well, 4 GB of length. The operations are optimized for long strings and for encoded strings. They are ideal for processing web contents and text files. This is a free add-on which is installed with CODESYS from SP20 on or with the installer, and there will be independent updates. They are an alternative to the string data type and to IEC standard string functions. The implementation uses interfaces and the feature of generic function blocks, var generic constant declarations. How does it look like? You all know the old string declarations. Here you see a UTF-8 string. The new declaration is a function block instance declaration, which is a bit more longer. If you look at the operation like the length of a string, traditionally this is the copy of a string into a function, a string which is limited to 255 characters, and then we search for the 0 character to find the end of the string. The new strings have a simple method which looks up the length, which is kept up to date in the data structure. Now if we combine strings to a longer string, we use the concat operation in the old library. Here strings of length up to 255 characters are copied in and out of the functions, here 12 times in total. If we do this with the new strings, we use a builder object and pass interfaces into the builder, which uses a dynamic buffer to combine the strings, and at the end it returns a new string object. The old approach is inefficient and limited in length, and the new one is efficient in operations and it's unlimited in length. Let's look at reading text files. This is a typical loop, reading from a file into a buffer and then converting it and appending it to a string, using a builder again. This is simple, even if this is encoded text. You only add the declaration what kind of encoding you find in the file, and then the builder will take care of decoding it, and it will even repair if UTF code sequences are split at the buffer boundary while reading them into the buffer from the file.
CODESYS OPC UA Client API will be released in January. This is a new add-on for UA client operations in the IAC application. It contains high-level function blocks which refine the low-level OPC UA client functions of the runtime. It is a free add-on that will be installed and updated with the installer. What are the features? You can connect to an address space on an OPC UA server by an access path containing namespace indices and node names. In the connected address space, you can browse the nodes, you can subscribe to variable changes and to events, you can read and write variables, and you can call methods. Now to the updates. There have been maintenance updates of IIoT libraries, of Application Composer, and OPC UA PubSub. The second update of the Composer only concerns the licensing package. The single license package was updated to make it compatible with the SP19 patch 3 changes in the license protection mechanism. And an update on the CODESYS simulation interface. The research and development will continue, and you can see a prototype at the SPS fair in Nuremberg. The release is planned for the middle of next year, and more information on this issue I give you on the next feature briefing.
And I may now lead over to my colleague Stefan Ambros with the last presentation for today. Stefan, what did you bring for us today?
Thanks. Hello together. I'm the product owner of the CODESYS Visualization, and today I want to introduce you to the CODESYS Visualization features and also to the alarm management.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Let's take a look at the presentation on the visualization.
In this presentation,
I would like to show you the latest features of the CODESYS Visualization for the currently released version 4.4 and for the next version 4.5. I will start with the features of the latest version 4.4. The first new feature in version 4.4 is swiping frames. This feature is about swiping content in a frame with several pages on a multi-touch device. Therefore, the multi-touch option in the Visualization Manager has to be switched on. Currently, the feature is implemented for the web visu, but we plan to implement the feature for the target visu as well. The frame element has got new properties: swiping behavior and swiping preview. With swiping behavior, you can choose if the content should be changed by horizontal or vertical swiping gesture. Swiping preview is possible in overlay mode. This means that the next page can be dragged in while swiping, so you see the new content while dragging. I would like to show you this feature in a short screen recording. Here you can see our Visu Demo Overlay project. Here several pages are part of the frame, and here you see how the pages are swiped. Additional features like opening and moving dialogues and flying in of an element or a menu are shown here also for the overlay features. The next feature is snap lines in the visualization editor. Snap lines are help lines that are displayed when moving elements. They are used to easily position elements against other elements. This allows you to align elements to the edges of other elements. Additionally, you can set the desired distance to other elements. If you then move an element close to another element, the moved element will automatically snap to this element distance. I also want to show this feature. You see here labels, and the labels are now positioned to the text field. The positioning is against the edges and against the element distance. The next feature is called container size. This feature is used to create visualization objects that adapt to the use in a frame. An example is the possibility to anchor an element on the right side, like here the checkbox. If you subtract the container width from the visu width, you get the difference with which the element has to be moved to stay anchored to the right side of the object. In the element frame, the scaling type fixed must be used. Offline and online, the position of the element adjusts now if the frame is used in different sizes. You see it here. Here is a template used in two different frames with two different sizes. So you can use the container width and visu width for the movement and also for the edges of an element. Now we come to the new features of the version 4.5. Alarm definition for types. With this feature, it is now possible to specify alarm conditions to function blocks or structures. With this, you are now able to create libraries where the type and the alarm conditions for the type are contained. Two new objects, Alarm Group Template and Alarm Class Template, are available for this purpose. Alarm class templates are used to define alarm classes in libraries. The editor for an alarm group template is shown in the following figure. Here you can select the type for which the alarms are to be defined. You can see in the configuration that for the variable X alarm, a digital alarm is defined. So you have access to the variables of this type and can define as many alarm definitions as you want. The configuration is the same as used for the alarm group in a project. A new editor is also available within the alarm configuration in the project. Here, it will be possible to insert all instances of types with alarm group templates automatically. For this purpose, the button Create or Update Alarm Instances has to be pressed. Then we search in the current project for all instances with alarm group templates and insert them automatically. By means of multiple selection and sorting, a fast assignment to groups is possible. The second feature for the new version is the possibility that elements can blink. For this, there is a new configuration in the base elements, in the button, in the text field, and in the image switcher. For the blinking interval, a variable or a constant can be configured. If the value is greater than 0, the element starts blinking in this interval. The element will then blink alternately with the normal and the alarm colors that can be configured in the elements. The blinking takes place completely in the client without increasing the CPU load in the controller. These are the new features for the visualization. Thank you for your attention.
With this last presentation, we reached the end of today's presentation part on different CODESYS topics. I will now reveal the results of the 5 polls you participated in. We'll start right ahead with the first question I asked you. It was about recipes in the realm of CODESYS, and the question was, how often do you use recipes in CODESYS? And well, the answers were quite mixed. So about 1/4 said never, about 1/4 rarely, 1/4 occasionally, a bit less than 1/4 often, and 5% answered they always use recipes. The second question I asked was about various applications on one PLC. So question was, how often do you use multiple CODESYS applications on one PLC? A bit more than 1/3 said they never do it, about 40% rarely, 12% occasionally, and 7% and 5% often and always. The next question in the row of polls was about a new construct class if you're implementing your application. And structured text question was if you see any advantages of a new construct class that combines method and properties of a function block in one object. And about half of you said yes, you do see an advantage actually in this new construct. About 50%, so like the other half, said, well, I don't have an opinion on that. And the rest, the 3%, said, no, we don't see an advantage in such a new construct. The second last question we asked you was about the Control Win Soft PLC on Windows systems. So the question was, should the CODESYS setup still install a CODESYS Control Win Soft PLC as a demo version on your computer? bit more than 50% said yes, we want to keep that feature. 25% said doesn't matter, and about 21% said no, I do not need that demo version of the CODESYS Control Win Soft PLC. Now, the last poll you participated in was about improved support. So in which areas of application technology do you have the most need for improved support? And as you could vote for various or for multiple answers here, their percentages won't add up to 100%, but of course to more. And you see most interest was about the development and reusage of own libraries, followed by creating own machine modules with their own logic, visualization, and connectivity. And then almost equal are the connectivity to various systems like SCADA, ME systems, clouds, using various protocols that are part of the IoT libraries or via OPC UA or PubSub. Also at the same level, handling of strings, files, and memories with 35%, and also with 35% was the simulating of machines that are controlled with CODESYS. Those were the 5 polls. For the last part, for the conclusion, I might hand over to my colleague Hilma Panzer again. Hilma, stage is yours again.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation. I hope you enjoyed the event. Yeah, we have no more questions open. We could answer them immediately. So there is no QA part and nothing to discuss right now. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed this event. In case you have any feedback for us, please don't hesitate to give it. We are happy to receive it. And we hope to see you again in 20th of March next year for the CODESYS feature briefing. And of course, if you want to visit us on the SPS in Nuremberg, we are happy to see you there. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.